exercises yourself. Before we do that, I thought I'd just share with you one of the companies we've worked with in South Africa. As I mentioned, our goal is to actually work with 100 companies in a city in the hopes that the tide will rise as those companies begin to impact society. Does this work? Well, I should mention, Jennifer says that we're kind of a, not the best kept secret, but a well kept secret in the whole marketplace space. And we made a choice many years ago when there was conferences happening. We said we can either go to conferences and talk about it, or we can do it. We don't have the time to do both. So we actually avoid conferences and speaking situations just because we are practically involved in taking teams out, mobilizing them, training them, taking them out. And also, we wanted to make sure, one of my clients once said, email, spreading darkness at the speed of light. And we wanted to make sure that what we were doing actually worked. And so after we'd worked with 100 companies in Cape Town, we hired somebody who spent about a year or so and visited 83 out of the 100 companies, did extensive interviews with them to ascertain whether or not there'd been a positive impact in the business. And there had been. And so this was one of the companies in Johannesburg. And this is a guy, Tim, who's the #2 guy in a company that got a new purpose. Their purpose initially was making chemical tanks for the mining industry. But then they understood as they went through our consultation that really for the 2 leaders of this company, their real purpose was raising up, empowering, and mentoring other young Christian entrepreneurs. Once they got that their business was a vehicle for doing what was really their calling, their business grew 6-fold in 6 months. How did that happen? You see, they would have missed it before. But once they understood that, people started coming to them and saying, I have this company. Can I be a part of your business? Will you mentor me? And they said, yes, 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 yes. And all of a sudden they went from 1 product line to 6 disparate companies in the group. Then what happened was they understood the importance of nurturing their employees as part of their household. They had many sort of low-skilled workers. During the time that we worked with them, one of the partners, one of these guys that they've been working with, came to Christ. Another situation happened where one of their chaps had been working in the company for 15 years. They kept bringing in managers from the outside, young, early, mid-20s, white guys. But actually the best qualified guy was a black gentleman who'd been there for 15 years, but their biases, they just ignored him. And we said, what's going on? They repented, and they made this guy the supervisor. That was one of the things that happened. Then what happened was they got a heart for empowering primarily their black employees. And what they began to do was train them up and spin them off in their own businesses. So they began to generate other secondary businesses. They had a property of 12 acres, still do, and they began these little, it became almost like an incubator. And so they have people developing solar panels or manufacturing them and doing other things. And then recently, with the whole capital markets crunch, the mining industry stopped their capital acquisitions, and they had to lay off 50% of their staff at CSI. Every one of those people got re-employed by one of the businesses they'd spun off. So, this is a little bit of Tim's story, and Tim is also involved in planting a church. So he has, you know, how do I deal with those things is his question.
Hi, my name is Tim. I want to tell you a little bit of my story about the tensions that I face between wanting to go in what is traditional full-time ministry or into a business, both of which I'm very passionate about and been very drawn to and inspired by. I've got amazing leaders that I look to in both of those areas, and that's been a huge challenge for me to try and figure out how to follow those passions without compromising or without losing from another sector of my life, another area of my life. And it was quite an inspiration to find that I could actually do both. And that was in terms of understanding my passion and my purposes transcend both my business life and and the call that God has on my life. So in other words, my ministry, if you want. I wouldn't use that terminology, but if you had to describe it as a ministry and a work, those are the two tensions that have been massive out there for me. And getting to the place where I understood that I didn't have to fight those, and I pursue my personal passion and my purpose in business as a ministry, as pursuing God's purpose for my life, His plan for my life, and really working that out in my business, in my church life, in my family life, and not having them compete, but having them all line up and truly pursue those every day, all day, each circumstance. I'm able to unleash who I am into every situation because I know that I'm pulling towards the same purposes and the same plans that God has for me. It's consistent across everything. It's just amazing.
Any comments or questions on Tim's story?
What was his company name?
The company is called CSI, and not quite sure. I can check their website for you, but you can. They're in a city called Benoni, B-E-N-O-N-I, in South Africa, and we're in fact going back there at the end of October, and we'll be working with 5 companies in their group and another 5 companies. And in a week's time, we will take them through all 10 aspects of their business and make sure that all of them are kind of set on the same foundation. So CSI is the name of the company. And now they're doing, some of their other amazing products they're doing. For example, one of their products is an LED lighting system. So they have a solar panel out of China, feeds down into a little battery pack, which then feeds off 4 LED light systems and cell phone charger. That's the basic model of the thing for like 125 bucks. Because there's big problems in Africa with paraffin stoves. Numerous people die because these stoves explode, or they burn wood inside huts, have respiratory problems and eye problems. So these guys, for $125, the deluxe version, you can get a flat screen TV, which doesn't do TV, but plug in educational stuff on USB drives. And so that's another one of their units that they've created, and with huge openings into Central Africa in particular. And so, but it has to be viable as a business. So you have to be, so the combination of business and missions. We try to get businesses to become self-funding, mission-sending organizations, where as people go out, they're not trying to do the business, the missions just funded by the business, but they actually do it. I was meeting with a major Christian organization, and I said, what are you doing? They said, oh, well, for example, in India, we've set up a water purification plant. It's going to employ 50 people. And I said, well, what's that got to do with your church planting among unreached people groups? They said, well, we're sorry that you asked that. Obviously, we're going to take the money from the water purification plant and we're going to fund church planting. I said, I'm sorry you said that. Because in reality, if they were integrated, they would actually plant the church inside the business. In other words, if they lived everything out in a consistent manner, you don't use those 50 employees to generate funds to support your missionaries. You use the business to bless the families of those 50 employees, those people, their families, etc. And then you equip them to be Indian missionaries, and you send them out with water purification, water treatment, whatever, out to other villages and places in India. And so, there we go. Yes?
Sure, just a quick question. One of the things he mentioned in his testimony is the competing interest of the business and ministry interests and so on.
Yeah.
And he actually said it's tremendous, and that it didn't compete. It just really helped the purpose as he worked that through.
Yeah.
The question that comes out of this to me is how do you balance the notion of decision making, your strategies versus God's strategies? And when do you lay it down and say, well, this is yours, this is your strategy?
Okay.
Lead in the direction of decision making.
Okay, great.
Can you please repeat the question?
Sure. Question is, how do you deal with the practical decision making to deal with some of these tensions? One of the last exercises I'm going to give you is to map out your decision making process in the light of convergence. So if you hang in there, you're going to get a chance to answer your own question, or we can We can go through it as a group. But that's a great question. Yeah. Okay, 3 parts to convergence, and then I'm going to give you an exercise. So one is your part. There are certain things that you need to do, things which you do by cooperating with God. In other words, as God leads you, as He directs you, you cooperate with God in simple steps of obedience, not necessarily having a 15-year plan or a 5-year plan, but doing the next thing that God tells you to do. And so that's the first part. The second part is the sovereign part of convergence, and I'm going to hand out these definitions to you. The sovereign part is God's part. There was a Catholic priest that I read recently who had been sort of doing his priestly thing for 35 years or so, and somebody asked him, "What have you learned?" He said, "One thing I have learned, He is God and I am not." And there is a sovereign part to convergence, which is great. So even when we do stupid things, a few people have asked me, "How did you end up in San Francisco?" Actually, I didn't pray about it. There was no angelic visitation, no confirming word in Scripture, nothing. I was supposed to go to Toronto, supposed to go to New York, supposed to go to London, etc. And the arrangements kept falling through. Eventually they said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "Oh, I want to go to San Francisco." And they said, "Oh, it's a great place for a holiday, but we want you to do some work." And God just opened the thing up. When we got there, we realized why God had put us there. But it was His sovereignty, not, you know, we managed in some massive way to just seek Him out. Then there's the end of convergence. It's when you get, as it says at the back of the book, when you get to that place in your life where God flips over the tapestry in your life. It's as if He's been taking different threads and weaving them together. What you did at school, what you did at university, what you did in different jobs, what you did in your church, and things that you somehow saw as disconnected. One day, God flips over the tapestry and you look at it and you say, "Aha, this is what my life is for. This is what it's about. This is how it all hangs together." The caution there is that if you're on your own career path, it's probably not going to happen. If you still think, and I meet many Christians who speak this way, well, this is my career. Well, I got my MBA from Stanford. I got my MDiv from here, or whatever. It's not yours. It's not your life. You are a bond slave of Jesus Christ. We signed up for servanthood. It's not your career. If you hang on to the rights to your career, you will be doing the right logical thing. And the same thing applies whether you're in a seminary, a university, or in business. Churches have their own career paths, and they're detrimental often to convergence. So we have to yield, we have to surrender the rights to our life, or we will not come to convergence. So, but if we do, it's awesome, because we get to discover how God has wired us and how He has a perfect plan for us that's totally consistent with who we are. And we can see that all the while He's been working all of these things together for good. So, do a lot of people come to convergence? Sadly, not enough. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to give you an exercise to do, which is has 2 pages to it, if I can find them. Maybe they're in this pile over here. Okay, here we go. So what I'd like you to do is, and we should have enough for everybody over here, so maybe we can just split the pile and pass them down. You'll need 2 pieces of paper. The front one looks like this with 3 boxes, and then, oh, it's on the back, no problem. So you just need 1 piece of paper. That's good if you can say. So this is to give you an opportunity to understand the definition of convergence. And I've unpacked those 3 components of the definition on your piece of paper. They come out of the book. And there's a question on each one. For example, on the first one, your part of convergence, what part comes naturally to you? Which parts are a little bit more challenging? So take a look at that, and you can